Three. Okay. Today we are live from Helene's studio, virtual studio, and I have invited Kayla Washington in, and I'm going to let it go over a little bit to her. We're going to experience, we're going to discuss, we're going to talk about a lot of subjects that are really important to our hearts. So, welcome, Kayla.
Hi, Ms. Helene. Thank you so much for having me and offering this space for us to have a nice little discussion. I thank you for everyone who's watching, and hopefully we do our best to speak our best to have this conversation. For most people would be considered a little bit triggering, but the topics that we're going to be discussing today are very, very important for a lot of people. And so I hope that you guys enjoy, and please send your thoughts and your comments to us. We'd love to hear anything that you guys have to say or have to think, but super excited to be here. My name is Kayla Washington. I'm 24, currently live in San Antonio, Texas. As far as my race, I am mixed, half Black, half white. And I am so grateful to be here with Ms. Helene to have this little nice little dialogue, little conversation, and just, a little bit about me. I hope to kind of give you guys some more details once we dive a little bit deeper.
Okay, so we are going to dive deep. As you hear Kayla saying, we're going to be talking a little bit about what has been going on in the world right now, and not just right now. It was funny because we were talking about, let's just go from here and forward. And then Kayla came with a very important insight, and that is, we can't really go forward unless we go backwards in time. Okay, so there are some things that we need to clear. Now, Kayla was saying she has both the white and the Black within her. So she's a beautiful exotic here with all of that. So you can almost understand that when you're in a body and you have both sides, where do you stand? And I want to tell you something about when I was very much younger. I had an experience as a Girl Scout. And I went to a Girl Scout camp with my Girl Scout, or was it brownies? Were we brownies? Well, we had the brown suits on. That's Girl Scouts, right? Or no, or were we younger?
Yeah, Girl Scouts. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. So, and we ended up coming to we ended up coming to the actual campground. And there was another bus with a whole load of other people there. And I thought, yay, we're going to have a lot of fun, And some of the girls behind me, they're like, but that's not our group. And I said, but we can get to know new people. That was my idea. We can get to know new people. And I remember almost the horror in one of the leaders' faces. They're not white. That's not exactly what she said, but this is what I'm going to say. And I was thinking, so what? Like, hey, we get to know other people, and the place was huge. We could have both. And to my recollection, we actually ended up we were a little bit separated in the rooms, but we were still there at the same time. So I got to know some of the people from the other Girl Scout group, and I thought it was wonderful. But on the bus home, my Girl Scout group didn't want to have anything to do with me. So, and that was an experience that was pretty devastating for me. I was like, well, why can't you just be open to, I don't care what color. I really don't, never have. But it was, for them, it was unthinkable. You don't do that. And I was like, of course you do. But okay. So tell me your experiences. What has led you to, because you must be on a level having to deal with both sides then, right?
Yeah, absolutely. At first I want to kind of you so much for sharing that you know, what you have experienced through that situation where you know, see a group of girls and your first thought wasn't, oh, they're African American. It's like, oh, look, there's some girls that we can hang out with. That's fantastic. That's not a lot of people's first thought. However, what you felt after the fact, feeling that, whether that's shame, whether that's hurt, whether that's feeling embarrassed, you know, it's unfortunate that's how you felt being on the outside, but how women of color, that's how women of color can feel on a day-to-day. If you could put yourself in that little brown girl's shoes, you know, how many times in her life had someone maybe not wanted to talk to her or play with her because of her skin complexion only. And the fact that you were so open and willing to have conversation and part the girls, whereas, you know, the other part of your group, maybe not so much, that just reminds us all that the feeling of discrimination or racism or disliking towards another group, regardless of color, sex, gender, is a learned behavior. People don't pop out of the womb saying, okay, I can distinguish between different categories or different groups of people being as either good or bad, and that just be instinct knowledge. That is a learned behavior. And that is something I had to learn at a very, very young age. And you know, the fact that I'm even able to sit here with you and speak to this topic, being a mixed woman, also speaks a lot to the privileges that I have been able to enjoy. I recognize that I do have different privileges because of my skin complexion, because I have green eyes, because the type of curls that I have, where not many women have that option or that opportunity that I may have because my skin complexion is lighter. So for me, in my experience growing up as a child, certainly is always going to be different than someone who is fully Black or fully Hispanic. But I will never forget when I was about 7 years old and moved here to San Antonio, Texas, in a space where, you know, African Americans are considered a minority. And when I was, you know, at my apartment, I was playing outside with my friends, and this little boy, he was younger than me, I'll never forget it. He came up to me and he started speaking to me, and he called me the N-word. He said that I was the N-word, and I don't even feel comfortable enough to even use that word because it stems from so much sadness and so much pain, truly. And I'll never forget that moment. I went home crying to my mom, who is fully Black, and I told her about what I had experienced. And it was so crazy that in that one moment, everything I knew about myself and who I was broken down and degraded to being considered this by this young boy. And what my mom had to remind me, even then, is that is a learned behavior, that his family had to have those same views in order for him to speak that way. If your family had that same thought process, Ms. Helene, you probably wouldn't have played with the girls at your Girl Scouts, you know, but that wasn't the case when you were open. However, the girls that were also there, maybe their parents had different views, and that's why they were socially conditioned to have that thought process about people of color. And so when we talk about the racial disparities, the tensions between different cultures, different genders, different sexual orientations, normally it is based off of these preconceived notions that and these stereotypes that have been conditioned to us even before we come out of the womb, you know? So it's very difficult to open up a space where we can have this honest conversation because there are so many layers to peel back of the onion. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I just want to also say that many of you might be wondering, why is she wearing a tiara and a white dress and whatever? And it's not because I'm queen or anything like that. It's just that I was told from the above when I was sitting in meditation before we started today. And that was that we are, because I was, you know, I was thinking in my mind leading up to this day, how is this going to be? How are we going to be able to work with this so that it opens up for dialogue And the information I got was bring in your higher selves, your God presences, open your hearts, okay? Because this is what we need to do. We need to unite. And I don't care what color. We have a lot of, and this is important, I think, because as a white person saying that, ooh, people can get mad at me because, oh yeah, you're privileged. I understand that. I understand that 100%. I used to actually be a redhead, just so you know. So, you know. but the thing is, it is important to unite because we are humans, okay? We all have a soul and we all have hearts. And whatever is being said today is said through our hearts. We are not going into the mumbo jumbo, and I'm sorry to say what our brains are saying. We are opening up our hearts for the debate, for being able to discuss this, because I'm sure that there's so many thoughts, emotions, feelings. When somebody says one word, that word is so
triggering,
loaded.
Mm-hmm.
It's so loaded. Mm-hmm. And it's a word. Okay, yes, words do hurt us. When they say sticks and stones don't hurt my bones, but words don't, what is it? They don't do it.
Never hurt me.
Yeah, words actually are really powerful.
Right.
But this word is very loaded. It's a loaded word, and it is, but at the same time, so people say, okay, I'd rather not talk about this. Mm-hmm. But we still have it within us. We need to heal from within. Mm-hmm. We need to heal on all levels. So if we can open our hearts, and I really, really would appreciate, just like Kayla was saying, comment below, have this as an open debate. Let us speak our minds, but connect with our hearts, so that when we do speak and when we do connect, it is cordial, because we are here to see where can we connect, where can we unite, not where can we separate. We're not here to separate. We're here to find out, moving on. Now, we do have history that needs to be healed. I 100%, and I work with that on a human level, emotional level. There's so much emotions that go into what is happening right now. And as you see, there's a lot of hatred coming out as well. But I see it as a process. Now, if the hatred stays, it's not a process. But if we're able to open up for discussion, open up our hearts, and try to open them up so we can heal them, then we can all start seeing the similarities that we have. Okay, we are human, we are love, we have hearts, we are united, we are in a place together. Nobody wants their children and grandchildren to continue suffering. Okay, there's one other aspect that's happening as well. We are waking up to another timeline and to our own ascension from 3D, 4D to 5D. Some of you might not understand what that is. That is completely okay. But that is why all the stuff is coming to the surface. All darkness, all negativity, all our past stuff is coming to the surface. And we need to bring it up. We need to be able to discuss it so that we can heal it. That's where I'm coming from. Yeah.
No, and I completely agree with you, Miss Helene. I think that we as people have, like I was saying, different social ideologies that have been pushed onto us even before we came out of the womb. As soon as our parents know that they're having a male or a female based off of genitalia, what do? Our parents start buying pink dresses for the girls, and for the boys, they start buying blue items. As soon as gender reveal parties, it's pink or blue. The little girls are getting little kitchens, and little fake vacuum cleaners, and the boys, they're getting enrolled in football, and that is, just a very base, like very small idea behind, or example behind how it is that these social contracts, affect us not only before, we come out as human beings, but also during our lifetime. And our environment certainly does have a major role, plays a major role in how and who we become. Have had different experiences with people of color, and they're able to categorize, okay, well, African American people are this, or people of color may have had an experience with, someone who is Caucasian and can blanketly say Caucasian people are this way. And these stereotypes, these categories that allow us for our brain to function, easily. Oh, this is good, this is bad, this is black, this is white, she's nice, he's mean. It's not. We are moving through that way of thinking, and with this awakening, with these movements, Black Lives Matter movement, Me Too, Pride, these movements have been created to offer support for people who have been victimized or who have experienced these injustices. Also have been created to help teach people who maybe did not understand. And when we speak about our words and how having certain conversation or saying certain things, how that can be triggering because it's loaded, it's maybe a loaded term, how that can affect people, I think that is the very, very first step that we take when we are thinking about how we incorporate change.
Yeah.
You have to think about what it is that you're saying and how it is that you're saying it. And we can use an example of, African American artists using the N-word in a song. And people in the African American community, the Black community, feel like that is their word because they have taken that term that has been used to hurt people of color, Black Americans, and they are changing that and they are making that name their own. And so for someone else who is not within this community to be using that term, it is the same exact word, but because of who is using it and how it's being used, it's completely different. So we have to think about how we are communicating, how we are thinking. We have to analyze ourselves. We have to analyze our own thoughts. And just like you were saying before we started this call, are my thoughts my own? Have they been created based off of what I've learned from my parents, what I've learned from my friends, what I've seen on TV, what I've seen on the news, the music that I listen to, all of this media, all these downloads that we're getting into our mind? We have to be the first person to reflect on our thoughts and understand that your initial thought is not who you are, that's who you've been conditioned to be. And your second thought that you say, you know what, maybe that was harsh, maybe that wasn't right, maybe I should reconsider that. That is how you begin to make change. And that is how you open yourself up to have these conversations in a way, in a space that is full of love, and with the hopes of just learning to grow and be a better person.
I love that. Really what is happening is that we're going out of duality.
Mm-hmm.
Look at that.
Mm-hmm.
What if we go out of duality? And we are doing that by raising our frequencies and going into the fifth dimension, because then we're all going to be in our heart space. So that's what we have to look forward to. But we're literally living in duality, and that creates separation. 100% on all levels. Separation. And what you were saying was very important with the groups and the movements, the Me Too movement, the Pride movement, the Black Lives Matter movement. Even though I might say that some movements I always check who is the one that is founding or funding this. But each one of these movements has put up an awareness. Maybe the word awake can push people away, like I am awake. But maybe awareness is a word to use a little bit more. Because in these movements, because I was in my own little world for a while, which I am often, and some of you might know that as well. But so I was in this peace, love, and understanding moment, and I was just feeling this whole thing. And then this whole thing just escalated after COVID. I was like, really? Do we need this now? What's going on? And I was a little bit distraught. I'm thinking, oh, has humanity not come further, and that was a little bit what we were talking about before we started too, is that we need to go into some of the history. And so then I say, well, what about the Martin Luther King history? He protested, but many of us know that if he had died as a much, much younger man, he would have been a thug, because he was doing things that was not what he ended up doing, being peaceful. I'm saying thug in the way, I'm sorry, I don't want to offend anybody, but if he had been taken out when he was much younger, he was into stuff that was not good. He was into gangs and stuff like that. You know that, right?
Well, I think that what is important when we're speaking to Martin Luther King Jr.'s past, and we're thinking about anything that he was involved in prior to him kind of realizing the importance of what it was that he needs to do. Yeah. I know for most people, maybe I can only speak for myself, the things that I was doing at 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, I wouldn't even want my own mother to know about, you know? And we, as humans, have to go through our life experiences in order to become the people that we were created to be. Yeah. And maybe you're right. Hey, if life wouldn't have happened the way it happened for Martin Luther King, maybe his path would have been different. But what I do know is his path brought him to where he was. He had to go through what he had to go through in order to fully be who he needed to be. And you know what's interesting is people often reference Martin Luther King whenever they're speaking about the Black Lives Matter movement or the riots that have been occurring all across not only the United States, but the world. But we also have to give accreditation to the many people that came during that time and before that time who also hoped for the same end goal, that all people, regardless of color, regardless of gender, regardless of sexual orientation, regardless of class, could coexist peacefully without any sort of discrimination being cast against each other. And for some people, peace was a way to do that. For other people, they had to make sure that they hammered that mentality and that thought process into the world in order for change to happen. And I don't necessarily know, and I can't even say which course of action is the best and most appropriate, because I can't speak to that. But what I can speak to is how all people involved in this movement, there has not been one single person individually who has enacted change. If we're going to reference George Floyd and the murder, blatant murder of George Floyd, I know that because of these movements, because of these riots, because of the action of the people, the activists who are actually on the ground wanting to enact change, his murderers, we're seeing that change happen for him. But we also have to refer to the other people of color who have been, I don't even want to use the word targeted, because I don't want anyone to think that I think that these people just were like, you're the person that I'm going to brutally attack today, because I don't think that's how that happens. But I do think that people of color are more likely to be exposed or to be chosen as people who receive violence or receive that discrimination. And for that reason, I mean, these are notions that we're seeing that dates back to the first African American who arrived here after being sold from Africa, the first ship that came in, and so when we speak to what we are seeing today in our world, this has been a buildup of pain, of murder, of genocide, of discrimination that people of color have endured since Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue, and the reason why you see these movements kind of arise and die down and arise and die down. If the systematic changes that needed to occur would have been done back in Martin Luther King's day, I highly doubt we would be experiencing this movement during a national pandemic. But that change has not occurred. That change was people did try to enact that change peacefully. We can refer to Colin Kaepernick taking a knee during his games to silently and peacefully protest the injustices that have been occurring. And people criticized him for that. People criticize people who are rioting and who are looting and who are, you know, being physically violent for this cause as well. So we also noticed that it's been done. Back to Martin Luther King Jr.'s days, before that, even now, people have attempted to make the systematic change peacefully and also through violence. And we're seeing that both have been used together and change has been enacted slowly but surely.
Yeah, and you know, and I agree with that 100%. I would like to now go just a little bit on the side there, and I would like to show up Mr. JFK, another person that was assassinated, but for the reason of him exposing some of the backsides, he called it I think he called it the shadow government, something like that. He was talking about that, but he also and this was in the 60s. Do you remember when? Remember when Martin Luther King was that the 60s too?
I'm not too familiar on the dates.
Okay. Well, because there was a lot of movement, there was a lot of things going on that were instigating this divide. I want to bring that in as well, because it is not just white and black. There is this other element, and if we can go in and I just want to bring this out. We go in and see the funding. Now, your point is I love it. Your point about the fact that the Black Lives Matter movement does bring it about change. It does. You know, the Pride movement brings about change. All of these movements, they do bring about change because they bring about educating people on what's not accepted anymore. Okay, so I have all these thoughts coming through. I'm gonna have to, okay, stand in line, guys. We're gonna have to, okay. But the reason why I brought up JFK was he was assassinated because he was trying to expose things that were happening, because he was a puppet. They wanted to make him a puppet, and he wanted to bring that forward. Black Lives Matter, the same thing. There is the movement in itself has a purpose, but the people behind it, and it wasn't even Black people. And that is, so then you have the violence coming in where people are actually protesting. Normal people go out and protest against the violence against Blacks and the violence against, you know, people of color and but then there comes these, what do you call them? People that are paid to go and to vandalize, okay? And that is where I am. Wait a minute, watch out, where is this coming from? But I can't take it all over one side, because I know that there were a lot of peaceful protesters out there that were genuinely peaceful, but they were ruined by these infractions of these people that are paid to come and to bring in violence, to ruin the cities, to do I don't know what. Right. And that is what that's why I put up JFK, because he tried to expose that and he was taken out. And it is happening over and over. And going to the 80s, I just want to bring out the fact that 3 world leaders that I know of, and I'm going to have to go in and research that a little bit more. Olof Palme from Sweden, Indira Gandhi from India, Anwar Sadat. Around 86, they were all killed because they started to work together for world peace. We don't hear much about that. You never saw the person. It was an inside job on all 3 of them. So infiltration of evil is there. And I just want to expose that. And I don't, you know, and I, because I was being told very, very importantly that I brought in JFK in this discussion, because his legacy is still working on exposing the deep. Okay, let's go back to what we were talking about. But I just wanted to make that point, because that's a very
Absolutely.
important point, because I know many. Okay, so if I say the word blacks, is that a good word to use? Because sometimes I say black, sometimes I say African American, and I get people that get mad at me. So I'm like, what should
Honestly, I think that regardless of which term it is that you're using, I think that it can be triggering. For me, when I hear the term blacks, it takes me back to Jim Crow days, and that's just me personally. But some people are okay with that. For me, I always say African Americans, because we are descendant of Africa and we are here in America. But I try to say people of color, persons of color, if I'm just referring to people within the spectrum, but I will refer to African Americans as African Americans in a way to not to trigger anyone or to make anyone feel uncomfortable. And that kind of goes back to what we were saying about reflecting on our thoughts and thinking about how we're speaking, because if I was saying blacks, 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 and someone's just like, she's black, why is she calling people black? Like blacks, you know, people might be uncomfortable and the message may not be received.
Okay,
but I try to be as respectful or use dialogue that people will respect, more so to make sure that my message is sent across, because at the end of the day, you and I, we don't want to offend anyone who will be watching this, and we want to make sure that we open up the space for everyone to feel comfortable to listen to this conversation. But thank you for asking that question, and I'm actually very happy that you had mentioned the people who have infiltrated different movements just across our history, who were pretty much planted to continue to cause chaos and mass destruction. And we saw that also through the Black Lives Matter movement. And thankfully now we live in the digital age where everything's practically recorded, and we can see there has been videos that have been sent across so many different, those are social media sites, whether it's YouTube, Facebook, the internet, that have now documented people who are not even a part of the movement, who have been lighting buildings on fire in the name of our cause, but who has not, it's pretty much doing a injustice, excuse me, to the movement.
Because and that was something that I just wanted to say too. I have in one video actually, and I just wanted to go back to where you were saying about naming or labeling. I don't like labeling either. But when we talk about people of color, it's white is a color too. You know what I mean? And red and you know, the Chinese, I think we call them yellow. I mean, it's, you know, it's but interesting enough, I've even said African American in a video, and I was being pointed out for that was wrong.
Right.
So I guess whatever I say, so maybe people of color is probably the best thing for me, the gringo, the whitey, the blonde, the dumb blonde to say, right? Because you know what, I can call myself that because it doesn't hurt me. I know that is not the truth. Yes, I do have gray hair, but it's interesting that you said that for you, black would trigger you.
It certainly would, because at the end of the day, I am not black. I am brown. I can't even tell you how many African American people are actually black. And when I hear black, it reminds me of, oh, she's a negra, like it reminds me of all of the loaded terms that back, you know, Jim Crow days, back in the days of slavery, it kind of flashes me back there, which for me, that is how I feel about the different labels. But at the same time, I can't speak to how every single person of color would feel about certain labels and certain terms. And at the end of the day, the fact that I'm even here speaking to this topic right now, I'm honestly, I don't feel even worthy to have this conversation as a mixed person, because at the end of the day, my experiences and my privileges that I have recognized does not even touch the experiences that true African American people are people who have darker skin complexion, or people who have hair that's different than mine, or people who speak in a way that's different than the way I speak.
Yeah.
Their experience will always be different from me. And
Yeah.
when we are speaking to this privilege, when we're saying that people who are of lighter skin complexion, regardless of if you are still a person of color or if you are Caucasian, you will have these privileges. And what the privileges are pretty much saying, or when people say white privilege, it's not to denote or take away from any struggles, any hardships, any difficulties that you have experienced in your life. It is just saying that simply for the color of your skin, you are not experiencing additional challenges or having to experience different injustices for the color of your skin. Yeah. And I see this constantly on different discussion boards or different YouTube channels or social media. People constantly saying, well, you're speaking to my privilege, but I grew up poor and I had to build my business from the ground up, and I had to work all the way through college. And I hope for anyone who's watching this that I can clarify that when people are using that term in relation to privilege, it is not taking away any of the struggles that we all go through as people, but your life has not been made more difficult because of the color of your skin.
Yeah. And I think that's important to know too, that the way the short time that we have already spoken about this, a lot of topics have come up, and there might be a need to go a little bit deeper into those topics. So, and that is something that but when you said that you are not the first one I have asked to come aboard to talk about this. Mm-hmm. You are the first one that accepted. Mm-hmm. But I've asked several more and have gotten the answer that and it has been different answers I've gotten, but most of them that it didn't feel comfortable to go online and actually expose this. And so, but I've been wanting to open up for discussion. I've been wanting to open up for debate, because that is how we educate each other. That is Absolutely. How we can connect with each other through Absolutely. Our hearts, through our minds, through the vision of connectedness instead of separation, mm-hmm. right? I mean, that is right. That is all that we're here to do, really. That is all I'm here to do. That is what, we are united as we are individual bodies. Mm-hmm. We are united as souls. We're together, right. Completely together. We can't right. differentiate between your soul and mine right now. I mean, we are completely in each other. It's like the air that we breathe. That's who we all are. That's where we are one. So we're really not separated, which some people are like, what? Really? But it's true. We are individuals in our bodies, but right. we are all together in the non-physical. That's where we are all right. connecting.
And you are completely 100% right. The thing that differs us mostly is going to be our experience. And for the people who you have asked to have this conversation with, I can completely understand why someone wouldn't feel comfortable speaking to this topic, not only because it can be a difficult discussion, especially if you're not in a space where you feel fully comfortable, and of course not knowing who's going to be watching this later, but we can go back in history and kind of review the people who have spoke out. If we're going to refer to Martin Luther King, who have suffered from a great deal of violence for speaking to this topic, and the level of uncertainty with that, even if we're just going to just refer to social media. I mean, I don't know if anyone's going to hop on my Facebook page and say, leave nasty comments, very well could be the case. But at the end of the day, as workers who are in servitude to others, it is our duty to speak to the injustices of people. And I don't want this conversation to be specifically around Black Lives Matter, because at the end of the day, there are so many groups of people who are experiencing similar experiences in a way, because of their orientation, as I keep referring to, because of race, gender, sexual orientation, people who suffer from any sort of illness. people who are suffering from like mental disorders, substance abuse. There are so many different layers and levels to when we speak to discrimination. And I don't think necessarily that one group necessarily matters more than another, but when we're referring to the Black Lives Matter movement, it's not saying that other lives don't matter. It's saying, hey, in this moment, we are seeing this happen. We are seeing this discrimination. We are seeing this murder. We are seeing the social injustices happen to people of color. So let's just focus a moment of time to fix the system that this foundation is built on so that we can enact change. Or if referring to other people of color, like the Hispanic or the Latina community, where we have children who are literally in cages right now, wrapped up in practically aluminum foil blankets, not giving the food and the showers and the true, they're not being taken care of. And how do we, as people, turn a blind eye to that? When we're referring to the LGBTQ community and we're noticing that Black trans people are more likely to be murdered at such a high disproportionate rate than cisgender people, there are injustices that are happening across so many different categories, and it's important that we do our due diligence to speak to all of them because they are all very important.
Wow, yeah, that is true. That is very good. I like what you said. That is important. And when you were talking about the children, all the children that have also been used for sex trafficking and all that, children's lives matter. Your life matter. My life matter. Black lives matter. All colored lives matter. But yes, right now we had a period of time where we were focusing on the Black Lives Matter. And you know what? That's a very good point, because when that happened, my initial reaction was, well, wait a minute, all lives matter, right? Mm-hmm. But that's a very good point you're coming with, that, hey, right now, let's focus on this. And that is good. That's a good way of looking at it, because I always look at, unity. How can we unite? How can we unite? Well, right. We need some healing as well. We need some right. healing to be able to unite. Right. If you are a young colored person of color that grows up and sees brutality from white policemen, for example, let's just look at this. You're in a community of color, and you're seeing your father, your brother, somebody getting brutally, mistreated. As a young one, you're going to be looking at that and you're going to, well, I don't like that person and I don't trust that person. And that person is, let's say, white, right? That person is white. Well, then as a very young one, you can look at it that all white people are bad. Right. And the opposite. How, right. So it's absolutely. So how are we, in the 70s, I was experiencing being bused into all the suburbs of Milwaukee, all the schools there. We that were living in the suburb, we were bused into the center of the city, and those that lived in the center of the city, they were being bused out to our schools. And I remember sitting on that bus wondering, how is that going to help anything? Mm-hmm. I don't get to be, I was in a predominantly white school, and we just shifted schools. I don't know what they were thinking, because I was like, how is it? I won't get to meet them again. Mm-hmm. Here again, me, and I want to meet other people, right? Because mm-hmm. but I'm like, well, wait a minute. So I sit in their school desks, and I see what I see. It didn't last for very long. Maybe it lasted for like 2 weeks, and then everybody was up in arms, like, we can't do this. This is crazy, But I never understood the reason. Mm-hmm. Segregation. Well, it was like literally today, I still don't understand what this was done. Mm-hmm. I can understand if half the class would go and then the other half would go, then mm-hmm. we would mix and then it would be more, we would learn from each other, right? I can understand, but just taking a whole school and moving it there every day and the other school, I just never mm-hmm. understood that one.
Mhm.
And I know I was telling you about when I lived in the military, we lived in these military barracks and my mother has a picture of me sitting in one of those kiddie pools where here I am. At that time I was redheaded and freckled. And then I had the different families that lived in the military would come and their kids would be in my pool. And my mother has this picture, and it's one of those old Kodak,
Little Polaroid.
the coloring is getting a little bit bad. But I do remember that the White family, they had the last name White, but they were Black, and they were, or people of color, they were on one side, and then I had a couple of Hispanics that were there, and I think I had either Korean or Chinese too, and maybe another girl or another boy that was with my color. It was so funny because I remember looking at that picture. I'm like, oh my God, the whole world is in that little kiddie pool, and we're playing, we're having fun, and we went roller skating afterwards, and I fell on my nose a lot in those days because the sidewalks weren't really straight, but I grew up playing with them all, but until I was 7, I had never seen anyone in any other complexion than myself. I come to the US, I was like, wow, it was like me going to Mexico before, and when I was painting, my paintings were, colorful, but not, and then I went to Mexico and my paintings exploded in color, okay? From that day on, I couldn't just be subdued colors, like strong colors. That's Mexico's fault. I love it. But the same thing here. For me, my eyes, wow, there are people that are having different complexion, than myself.
Right.
And I had never seen that before. And also the hair, I thought that was the coolest thing. Oh, I want to have hair like that. And they're looking at me like, really? I'm like, yeah, that's so cool. You guys,
it's a lot of work.
I know, I heard that later. And I remember having one of those long combs, the comb that you picked the hair with, right?
Oh, a pick.
Yeah. And they're like, why do you have that? I thought it was cool. they're like, you're crazy, girl. No, but it was, it's embracing the differences. I feel that embracing the uniqueness of us. I think that's very
absolutely. I think the focus is about unity and appreciating the differences and similarities between cultures, but also still having respect for where that culture comes from. If we're going to refer to hair, you mentioned that.
Yeah.
African American women have been styling their hair in completely different ways. I mean, since the beginning of time. And if we're referring to braids, if we're referring to weaves or wigs or extensions, if we're referring to the afro hair, what we're seeing now if we're referring to like cultural appropriation, for example, is understanding where you are getting this piece of someone else's culture and respecting where that comes from, and having the knowledge and the understanding of where that comes from so that you're doing so in a way that still has respect. And I see this debate happen all the time through social media where Caucasian women will be wearing braids or rocking wigs and whatnot. And people of color, they get upset. They get upset about this. And the reason why a lot of people do get upset about this specifically is because African American women, when they wear wigs, when they wear weaves, when they have hair down to their butt, that's considered ghetto, or braids is considered ghetto. Whereas when Caucasian women will wear these hairstyles, it's considered trendy. Or we can refer to boxer braids, now trending by the Kardashians, boxer braids. Women of color have been wearing their hair like that for so long. And so when we're seeing that where this trend is being taken from, this specific culture, and the culture who actually created this trend is being chastised or degraded for doing one thing, but another culture can then use that hairstyle or pick and choose pieces of that culture, and then it's considered trendy. That is why people will be upset about that. And when we last spoke, and when I last saw you, you were talking about my hair and you loved it and it was big, and I was like, no, I want it bigger. But I have also been shamed for my hair before, you know, and wearing my curly hair, and it's not as nearly as thick and as textured as other different curl patterns. But whenever I go in for an interview, I normally straighten my hair because I don't want to be perceived as something that I'm not because my hair is like this. The fact that we are having lawmakers introduce legislation to prevent discrimination against people with their natural hair, a certain hair type, the hair that grows naturally out of your scalp, we have to think about, why do we even have to do that? Because it's happening. When we are noticing that people aren't able to get jobs, or there's discrimination in the workplace because of their hair, and they're having to create legislation for that as well. We have to take a step back and say, even though that sounds ridiculous, it's like, why do we have to do that? Because it's happening. And I think that with a lot of these movements, they are, like we've been saying, creating awareness around so many different aspects of discrimination or racism that may be occurring, but also through that, we are experiencing unity. And like you were saying, you know, we want to see that unity come together. And I have seen so many people support these movements. People that I did not expect are actually out there in the front lines during a pandemic, because this is important. And so we are seeing that unity happen across these different movements, and it's up to us, it's our responsibility to make sure that we show support, that we are present, that we aren't silent, that we are vocal about the importance of this movement, because that allyship also enacts change. It allows for dialogue, it allows for that unity, true unity, because unity happens with the people. It starts with the people. And if we're not noticing that throughout our communities, then we're not going to see that change happen. And once we have that unity within our community, then that's when that social pressure enacts into our government, and that's where change happens. So what we're noticing is that these different layers, we have created a foundation for this conversation, these movements to actually work. And so we're seeing slowly but surely this change that has happened. It's not happening as fast as I'd like it, but we're noticing that this change is starting to happen. And then that unity and that love that's being spread across different cultures, different people. It's so beautiful to watch, because at the end of the day, people just want to be loved and accepted and appreciated and respected for who they are. And everyone wants to be held to the same set of standards. They want the opportunity to live the same kind of life. And with the systems that we have in place currently, it's very, very difficult for a lot of people to do that.
Okay, so then I would like to, because we are in a time frame here, but I would like to do something, and I would like to say that is very beautiful. Yes, united, we are stronger, and that is something that we need to look at. At the same time, our differences make us unique. Each one of us came down with a frequency, and I want to go into that actually. Each one of us came down with a frequency. We came into this world with a frequency, and it's very important to understand that each one of you looking at this right now has your perspective of this, what we're talking about, and we would very, very much like to have that, but we would like to connect with you with this perspective, because we are both open to discussing this and to helping us unite more. And so that if you look at this and you're listening to this and something has triggered you, good or bad, if there's a negative trigger, I want to tell you that the intention here was to open up for dialogue, so we can bring this forward, so that we can heal, so that we can unite, so that we can, be amazed at each one's uniqueness and beauty in themselves. And this is very important. I work very much with empowering. That's one of the biggest things that I feel on this earth right now, to empower ourselves and to open up and to become more aware of the amazing beings we all are here. I used to say that many of us think that we ride around on a tricycle, when we are, in fact, each one of us has a 12-cylinder Rolls Royce that we drive around in. We just haven't found it yet. But the reason why I'm saying that is because we are so much more than just the color of our skin. Come on, guys. Really. The hearts is one of the most important things to come from. And all the things that are going on right now, if we can open our hearts just a little bit more each day, just a little bit more, opening up to another aspect or another opinion or another way of living. And that was one of the things that I think when my children were growing up, I took them all over the world, good places, dangerous places that were completely in different cultures, just to make them world citizens, not just from one little place and this is where I'm going to be born and die. No, places where you open up your minds. And that's what I feel we're doing today. I feel we've done that very well today. Open up our minds, open up our hearts, open up to being, to unity. I have my perspective, you have yours, but there's so many more perspectives out there. And I know that because there are millions of people out there with a different programming, different set of skills, different set of life events that have happened that have brought you into that perspective as well. So if we can look at this as a way to heal, open up our hearts, heal, and unite, oh my goodness. Guess how much further we can go if we can do that from now. And I'm here, I'm also a therapist. I know that Kayla works with yoga. So you have, that great energy as well. And so we are all here raising the frequency. That's really what we're here to do with everyone that watches, that resonates with this. If you resonate with this, welcome into the group. Here we are here opening up our hearts. Hopefully you will connect with us so we can really do a movement that has to do with opening our hearts and uniting. That's all I have to say. What would you like to?
Yeah, I think that was perfect. I'm so happy that you had mentioned all of that. I'll just close with saying, hopefully everyone paid attention to this dialogue and understands that by no means are we pointing out people as good people, bad people. You did this, you did that. As far as I'm concerned, we didn't even go there. Tried to make this as light as possible. But what I do hope is that you guys are at least able to hear a little bit about what we spoke about. And if you don't fully agree with anything that we talked about, that is completely okay. If you felt triggered by any of the things that we spoke about, that is completely okay. I do suggest that you take a look and puzzle over a moment on whatever it is that maybe triggered you and your feelings, and think about where that came from. Think about the why. Why are you feeling the way that you feel about this conversation? And leave a comment down below so that we can just kind of take a look, because this is a learning experience for all of us. We're all learning how to work together and operate as best as we can. And I know that no one intentionally in their heart just wants to walk out of the door in mean spirits. No one wants to intentionally hurt anyone's feelings. But at the end of the day, your perception is always going to be your reality of a situation. So how do we all unite in our perspectives and educate each other so that we can all grow and better understand each other in that way of thinking and in that way of living? So hopefully you guys enjoyed this conversation. So grateful again. Thank you for having me, Helene.
Thank you, Kayla, for listening to the call, coming onto this planet with your beautiful being. And thank you, every one of you that came on and are listening and might be listening later on as well. we are open to comments and everything. I send so much love to all of you. We are sending so much love to all of you. And may you have a wonderful day and a wonderful life. Okay, with much love. Bye.
Bye.